So today I'm going to start off by asking Guy a few questions about an event that we have coming up. We have our third Weekend of Wisdom, September 22nd to the 24th. So that's coming up in just a few weeks, and I wanted to just start off our discussion today, maybe talking a little bit about that and asking Guy what he intends to cover. And we also have a group of people, a nice big group of people here in the room. So after we kind of get the ball rolling with talking about that, the Weekend of Wisdom, I'll open it up to the group and they'll come up here and maybe chime in on the discussion or talk about what they're working with or ask questions as well. So let's just go ahead and get started. Hi.
What's on your mind?
What's on my mind, yeah. So the topic for our Weekend of Wisdom in September is, there's no greater joy in life than this. And I know that every time we have this kind of a chat where we're talking about an upcoming event like that, where you have a special topic, I always hone in on certain words. And I feel like you put the titles together you craft them very carefully. But of course the word joy really jumps out in this title. And I was thinking about that, I think of joy as something that happens very rarely in my life. It's something that is a moment where, there's a big accomplishment, or maybe I'm not a parent, I don't have kids, but maybe someone who's had a baby, there's a moment of joy when you have your child. And it seems like sort of these momentous occasions where you experience joy. But I have a feeling that what you might be telling us about is that there's a type of joy that is ever present, that a person can be engaged or, immersed in moment to moment to moment. And so what does that look like? What does that kind of a daily present joy look like?
As always, I think it's the most important thing to do, to put everything in its proper context. Because if we just start out with the idea, like you said, of joy, right, then everybody very mistakenly already believes they know what that joy is, and it's always connected to a particular event in time in our life.
Right.
And as everybody should know, and part of putting this into context, is that all of those moments of joy evaporate like skyrockets that are exploding in the sky, and then the dead shell falls in some distant valley that you don't even know exists. The valley of dead joys.
Or killjoys.
There really is that, I don't know this for a fact because I haven't studied it. You'll forgive me if I look at the...
You can look out there, you can look at the camera every so often. That's our audience right there.
But just as we have studied in the past, we understand that in the New Testament alone, not to mention in the older languages that preceded the Aramaic,
Sounds right.
that the idea of love was covered in at least 6 different ways. And that love at the level of this earth is a gradient, dependent upon experience, and that the experience of the grades of joy all have to do with what a person believes the source of their joy is, so that you can't separate a person's joy from what they believe to be joy. Mm-hmm. But like love, which has these various levels, this idea that joy it really belongs to another level of being altogether. And that's what makes it so challenging to understand and talk about with men and women who fear that you're going to say something to take their joy from them. Any joy that can be taken from you isn't joy. It's just the opposite of something that waits in time to prove that what you are identified with is going to disperse and dispel itself again, and then you're going to be left trying to figure out, what do I do with that? And at a certain point in a person's life, in their spiritual life, we've had so many shocks. I hope that you've had so many shocks to realize that, you know, here I was riding high, what does Sinatra say? Riding high in April, shot down in May. And at some point, you don't want a joy that can be shot down.
Are you talking about like adjusting our idea or definition of what joy actually?
No, I'm saying we have to abandon the whole idea of joy as an intellectual construct,
Gotcha.
as a condition that we are creating for ourselves, or that we have some control over, or that it has control over. The whole thing has to go out the window. We don't yet see, which is the purpose of this school and these teachings, not my teachings, the teachings through time, that there are, for our purposes now anyway, there are at least 3 distinct kingdoms. There is the kingdom in which most human beings live, which is imagination, where for us our joy is the temporary sensation of something that we've imagined coming to pass, and as it comes to pass, it fills us with the pleasure we thought we would be able to get from it, and we call that joy the fulfillment of the moment, when all that is just a sensation, and a temporary sensation of that. Evidence abounds. I can't prove it to you. You've either seen it or you haven't. Then there is another kind of joy and another kingdom, and we could simply call it the kingdom of of earth, of a human being who spends at least half of their life present to their body, to their environment, and the other half, because they can't help it, asleep in imagination. But when a person is present in the simplest level, then they get to experience a joy that has no cause in nature. The joy of being with a wild animal and sharing the experience of that nature. So that joy is an experience that doesn't have a predicate, that doesn't have something that comes before it that you were expecting to set it up for yourself. The joy of looking at a baby. I mean, sometimes these, God help us, sometimes these little things are, you're a little tiny person, little tiny toes and fingers and stuff. It's unbelievable. Just a little thing. It's a miracle.
What about the joy of just being in conversation with someone completely engaged, like without any thought? It's just a flowing conversation.
And when does that happen?
I feel like that happened recently.
Really?
Yeah. No, where there's this spontaneous laughter that's happening just purely in conversation.
Well, then that's fine. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Joy without anticipation.
Yeah, right. Where no one's trying to actually create it, or
there's just involvement in the moment.
yeah, right.
That's another kind of joy that can only take place when you are actually here and now and listening and experiencing fully the dynamic of whatever that conversation is, because it's like a river. It flows into itself. Mm-hmm. That's the second kind of joy. And it belongs to this world and the individuals in it. Then there's another kind of joy. A joy of great cost, though. Every true teacher, every authentically awakened individual speaks of it, however they do. Which is, there's another kingdom. Actually, another level of consciousness that doesn't look for what it wants to create joy and doesn't try to avoid what it fears will take its joy from it. It is, for all intents and purposes, to use the word now, it is the joy of no anticipation. Because it is in our anticipation that comes the sense of loss. It is the joy of understanding that who you are doesn't require wanting and not wanting to establish itself, to make itself. That idea, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, he goes before me. That whole passage from Solomon is indicative of something that is so alien to ourselves as we are. It describes description that a person can be so connected to the fulfillment of what they are given in the moment that it never occurs to them to want anything more than to just be where they are. That's joy. And the reason it's joy is because it doesn't hold any disappointment. It doesn't hold any irritation. It doesn't hold any expectation. It doesn't hold any pain at all. It is fully present to the process of the individual experience of the moment. And the experience of the moment is not the experience that we create for ourselves through seeking joy. It is the experience of being part of that creation in that moment, where everything that is being given is being used, everything that is being used is being made new. And there's no room inside of that for anything to not be joyous.
Mm-hmm. And are you valuing, right now, like back to the first kind of joy, I mean, we sort of imagine something, that's going to bring me joy, bring me happiness, love, contentment, peace, whatever. And there's an attachment to what I think is valuable about that. But in the kind of joy you're describing, there's nothing.
There can't be. You tell me, Katie, can there be compulsive pleasure?
No.
If there is some pleasure and it's compulsive, is it real pleasure? It cannot be. And we, as human beings at this level, mostly in the world beneath this world, all of our pleasures are the expression of our seeking something that we want or trying to avoid what we don't want, and then accomplishing what we want, and then the pleasure of the momentary sensation of, I did that, I'm real, I'm fulfilled. Only to find out that a moment later, as I always say, the conditions change, and when the conditions change, out the window goes the contentment, and then I'm back seeking again. How about this as a good definition of joy? The absolute absence of seeking. Because that's all we know. The mind just never stops. It just grinds and grinds and grinds. And every thought that it comes up with to deal with the loss of something that it values seems to fill it again with the promise of another joy when I finally get this resolved. Instead of recognizing that every thought becomes literally, and I'm going to talk about this tomorrow in great length, every thought becomes the center of a new world, orbiting that particular I and what it's imagining, and then that crashes down and it tries to find something else. It goes to the next thought and the next thought. Joy has no thought in it at all.
Yeah, see, I was thinking my everything that I'm trying to say here involves coming up with a word that describes what this is, and that's like right there.
It is
dead in the water.
It is. It's antithetical.
Right. Because it's not about valuing something different. That in and of itself is still a want or a desire.
Joy is not the fulfillment of the past that is dissatisfied with itself. Joy is not a future in which that dissatisfaction goes away.
Right.
Joy is the absence of that dissatisfied nature, of that incomplete self, because somehow by the grace of God, one finds a relationship with another order of life that is self-completing.
Yeah, okay.
That's what joy is participating in the endless perfection of creation that lives and dies at the same moment spontaneously, and you go along with that. Just one more thought on this topic. For us, most of us, joy is the fulfillment of myself. Never suspecting that the fulfillment of myself only exists as a need because of something in this consciousness that feels incomplete and unfulfilled and seeks that fulfillment in everyone and everything that it interacts with. So the real definition of joy, as far as I'm concerned, is the absence of that self altogether. Perfect self-sufficiency is joy.
Can I ask a question?
Perfect independence is joy. Perfect responsibility is joy. But not responsibility that I'm stressed to carry out so that I feel like I'm someone special and have accomplished something, but responsible to the moment, in the moment. Now ask.
I can't know what my purpose is then. Like in what we're talking about, I mean, a person always wants to know, what am I supposed to do? Why am I here? Shouldn't I have goals? We're hardwired to pursue.
I know, that's why it's so hard for me to say, I am the purpose.
Right, and so, I
am the purpose. There is no purpose
Right.
beyond what I am in the moment that I'm that. None. And any purpose outside of that is a pipe dream. It's something this consciousness, with all of its past content and its dissatisfaction, has carried over time and time until a person walks into this world, takes on this body, and we're replete with a consciousness that believes somehow or other that I must become something, I must do something, I must control something. And every last part of that belongs to this old, dead consciousness. Whereas what you really are is part of this beautiful creation and bridge of energies that move from the highest to the lowest, that is always being built, completed, traveled over, and then brought back again. I am the purpose of this moment. Christ said, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." Translation: the prayer is, may I be a man or a woman who, for having expired all of the futile joys that this world promises as an end to the pain that seeks that joy, can I be that man or woman who, moment to moment to moment, is the fulfillment of that relationship between these two wills, between what is timeless and what is in time. And in that, I have all that I can be and all that I can do. That's another definition of joy, incidentally. Not that you don't have life and family and friends and you do the things you do, because you do. You have a personality. Well, some of us have a personality. You know why people have no personality? They're all locked down like this. Everybody afraid. Yeah. Everybody afraid, clinging. No, the ideal situation is for a person to understand that they can have all of these things in their life. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added to you. But hidden in the idea of all else that is added to you is that everything that's being added to you is superfluous to what and who you are. Mm-hmm. So it can come or it can go, and that's joy. Mm-hmm. Go or don't go, stay or don't stay, be with me or don't be with me. And not just people and conditions, but your own thoughts and feelings. Be with me, go. I don't care. I have my own life. That's what joy is. And it's not my life, it's God's life.
So a life of non-attachment.
Yeah, but see, but see, again, and I know that you're doing this for the sake of, but so non-attachment. Well, what is non-attachment? I'm attached to the idea of not having attachments. because if I could just be non-attached, I'd be free. No, now I'm dependent upon being someone who doesn't have attachments. You either understand the futility of identifying and take it, and all of us do it. It's built into this consciousness. Let me measure my friends, let me measure my possessions, let me measure my authority, let me measure my appearance, let me measure. Right. And it's just built into a consciousness that only knows itself as something outside of and apart from the life that it looks out and believes is separate from itself. Joy is knowing that I'm not separate from the life that I'm in.
Well, when we talk about these things, and especially when we get to this level of talking about it, you start to kind of go into this place of, Well, I can't do that. I can't be that. I mean, to live in this, I often think just how immature I am spiritually speaking. You know, I feel like this very, very undeveloped entity.
But not you, Kate, this consciousness.
Yeah. Okay, well
I'll say it to you
yeah.
otherwise now.
Okay.
There's no joy in a comparative life.
Right.
Everything that you find missing in yourself, you can't find missing without having first imagined what should be there. Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is that's just a mind seeking a sense of self that first finds a limitation and then imagines what it has to do to get past that limitation. Mm-hmm. And then comes up with that as the definition of joy. And then it gets past whatever it thinks it has to get past. It gets $1 million, it gets a six-pack set of abs. Not me as an example, whatever it is. And in that moment, then I've got joy. And no, I don't have joy. What I have is the next condition that will reveal that consciousness that keeps playing itself out and me as the pawn on its board.
What's a good intention? You know, something to start with this particular topic. You know, what's a good intention that one can give themselves?
See,
I'm still doing it.
no, it's good. It's good
Yeah.
because this is, you are expressing
Representing.
how the mind works.
Right.
Like if we were sitting here and God forbid, like an 18-pound tarantula came walking across the floor, well, you have your nightmares, I have mine. You know, do I need an intention at that moment?
No.
Or is everything evident in the moment of the impression? So the impression isn't separate from the consciousness that receives it. The impression is part of the movement of action that follows when that awareness is there.
Right.
So for me to have an intention means I don't see what I am.
Okay. I've still taken myself out of the moment.
Yes,
I put
exactly.
myself in time when, you know, because of this intention I've set, then something is going to come to me as
That's
a result of it.
That's all this mind
Right.
knows how to do. It's just a dividing machine.
Right.
Because it's me that has to have the intention so I can have joy.
Right.
When the fact that I have the intention is stress, and then when I don't succeed, it's judgment, and when it's judgment, then I hate the man who gave me the information to begin with.
He's wearing such a nice pink shirt. All right.
That's all right. You know what? You know what joy is? Joy is not caring whether people like you or don't. That's what joy is. Having your own life and knowing that you have a relationship with something that can never be taken from you as long as you exist. And when you have that relationship, by the way, you know that you exist forever. Because that relationship does exist forever. So back to that, what's a good intention? Well, how about instead of trying to figure out what a good intention would be, how about if I was just to try to stay a little bit more aware of myself, so that suddenly I feel this dissatisfaction, I feel I'm incomplete, I'm a stupid seeker, I'm a dumb spiritual person, and I've got to do something about it. Well, who wants to do something about that state other than the consciousness responsible for producing it in itself?
Right.
So to see that, you don't need an intention, and when you see that, it brings an end at that level, in that moment. It completes the purpose of the moment. That's what's so hard to explain. I know I'll die talking about this. Not today, I don't think. I will never, ever stop. The very existence of my awareness of any given moment does not exist apart from any resistance I have to that moment. And when that resistance is understood as being part of the fulfillment of that moment, then in that split second, the resistance is not apart from the moment, but serves as part of the process of ensuring the moment is perfected according to the forces that met in that moment for that purpose. That's where you want. That's where you want to be. That's what you want to be a part of. Because then you're not outside of God's, you're not outside of cause. You're not outside of cause. The minute that you're outside of cause, you have become in effect cut off from the movement. And joy is being part of cause. Joy is experiencing effect. And joy is the reconciliation of cause and effect that produces the new creation that sits there and moves through that.
Well, I'll end with one thought, and then I'll turn it over to anyone else in the room that wants to come up and speak with you about this. But I used to snowboard, and I remember one time taking a lesson, and the person who was giving me the lesson showed me a completely different way to snowboard, where you're riding on the edge. I don't know how to put it other than to say there was a different type of physics involved with it.
Yes.
And I that was an example of like a physical joy. I mean, I felt like there was something that my body was in relationship with that I'd never experienced before in terms of a principle.
No, that is 100% a fact. But the joy of that moment wasn't because you created a new level of balance.
Right.
The joy was your entrance into the discovery that another order of balance was there all along, but you were ignorant because you were clinging to the old way.
And there was nothing to be done in that moment other to be aware of it.
And to have the enjoyment, enter into the joy of those moments, which I think is what enjoyment means. Enter into that, and God willing, and obviously create an impression that has stayed with you for over 75 years now.
I look pretty good for 75. Minus 20. All right, well, I'm going to hand it over to you guys. So does anyone want to come up and sit in the hot seat? Don't all jump at once. Here comes Heidi.
Do you understand what I was talking about?
Yes, very clear.
I had a tiny impression while you were talking with Kate about joy.
Yes.
And remembered when I was a young girl, we used to get together very much like we just did today. Everyone would get together, clean up the building where we met, and there was nothing to do but pull weeds and dust, and you were never going to be anybody special by doing that, but there was natural joy. And I felt that today working, in the kitchen. It was like the simplest of tasks to cut a cucumber. But there was no one there to cut it. You either participated or you were in thought. So I just wanted to share that because what you offer here at the school is the epitome of real joy. And it's hidden, but it's right in front of us.
It is right in front of us. It is right within us.
So thank you.
So just to comment on that one thing that Heidi said. In this world we have, because we are a certain developed form of animal, this body, and having moved through the iterations of literally creation itself, from the single cell all the way to whatever this complex form of humanness is, we carry with us certain things. One of the things that we carry with us is that we have a, in quotes, natural longing to belong. Human beings are social creatures like other creatures of a higher physical nature. There is a point at which animals do not have that need to belong, and you'll usually find it further down the ladder. Lizards don't usually have parties. And because of the nature of our consciousness and the instantaneous way in which it identifies with a certain kind of joy, then it ascribes that joy to the condition that produced it. And once the ascription, once I have ascribed that joy to the condition, then the mind that has made the image and finds the pleasure in it, then that mind wants to create that condition again. And if it can't create the condition again where it feels like it belongs, then it feels like it's been shut out. And so the joy of belonging becomes the suffering of feeling like I'm isolated. And you can't separate that sense of isolation from the identification with wanting to belong to something. That's the problem with schools. That's the problem with spiritual teachings and gurus and all the rest of that. Is that it, by nature, not because the foundation of itself is that way, but by the nature of the students, becomes this attachment to the further sensation of being identified with something. And then that man or woman, without knowing it, has lost the way. Can't tell you how many so-called higher teachers I met that lost the way. And they lost the way because in one way or another, the way for them became the adoration of the students around them. But joy is not seeking adoration. Joy is participating in the adoration of that which has liberated you from the need to belong to anything outside of the divine. Then everything is added to you accordingly. And people can adore you or hate you, and it makes no difference to you at all. I tell you, no difference at all. Human beings salivate waiting for flattery.
I was going to sit.
Come on. Everybody, this is my wife, Patricia, if you've never joined us before.
Hi.
Hi.
As you're speaking and as I hear listening to you, it seems like you could just sum it up that joy is the absence of self.
Yes.
And just like Heidi was talking about, you come here, you work in a work party or you do volunteer work somewhere, and there is a joy in there unless you're getting a sense of self from it. So it could be either way. You always feel good when there's an unselfish work. And there it is. You come to this building and do things, or wherever she was, and you feel a certain, because there's an absence of you in that time. And I think that's a good way to sum it up. Like you just said, all the teachers and all that, they start identifying with themselves and
This is why my wife is in my life, to sum up everything for me.
Yeah,
I'm back.
You floated back like Daisy and the Fitzgerald or whatever that was. What's up?
No clue.
Okay.
Yeah, so Frida wrote in a note
Okay.
on Facebook, and I thought I'd read it because it seems to go along with what we're talking about.
Good.
She says, if you do the work like we do, then at some point you no longer feel that joy, but you also no longer feel terrible. There comes a balance that is good. You think then this will go well, and I hardly feel anything anymore. But if you're really in the now, then you sometimes feel love and joy very much. I feel that. Is that what you mean?
That sounds good to me. That sounds good to me. I'll give you another definition of joy. I don't need anybody else to help me understand my life.
Oh, I like that.
I mean, when you think about it, aren't you always, first of all, asking others, God help us, or if not that, talking to yourself to understand something. We believe that we can understand something by talking to ourselves. Here's a famous quote: if you're talking to yourself, you're talking to an idiot. I just made that up.
Put that on your pillow.
Yeah.
You know, Eric and I were talking earlier today about how, maybe you don't need to actually learn anything. That life can just be given to you moment to moment. I mean, I don't want to speak for Eric, but I'm developing this kind of on my own here. is there anything to that at all? I mean, we're,
Do you remember the story I told, another explanation of the prodigal son? The prodigal son left home because he was looking for the joy of being special,
Right.
of attaining wealth and position and
Right.
power, of being someone who would be seen by his brothers,
Right.
who achieved that which they didn't because they were cowards and stayed at home. I mean, you just go on for
Right.
days like that, right? And so out he goes, and then it says he squandered what he was given from his father. So here was the path of becoming, of creating the experience of myself through my adventures in the world, which is all valid. You can't avoid that. You can't escape that. If you try to escape it, you're dead in the water. It is the negation of that journey that becomes not becoming, but becomes what?
unbecoming.
Unbecoming. And that's what you just described. If the process is not the process of adding something to myself, then I can see that everything I've added has added nothing but weight and stress and grief. Then the process is one of negation. Negation is unbecoming. In negation, there's nothing learned. There's only something that is tossed. There's only something that comes to an end.
Okay.
So when something comes to an end, you don't learn to bring it to an end. You see it has no future. It ends. You're free. And then there's the next thing that you see you don't need, that you don't want, that serves no purpose in your life at all. That's what this journey is. We're in a giant amusement park, a rather dystopian one at this point, I might add, in which there's the endless promise of some joy to come when you just get on this ride, or when you get off that ride that you paid all that money to go on to, you know? Because then you'll find another husband or another jerk of some kind in order to spend your life upside down with, whatever it might be. And then, so at some point I'm standing there, and I don't see a damn ride I want to go on. Now, do I have to learn not to go on those? Or did I learn from being on them that they don't go anywhere?
Right, right, gotcha.
And the more I see that, the more I reach what Frida was kind of talking about, which is I don't have this, woohoo, but neither do I have the boo-hoo.
Boo-hoo, right.
So somewhere between woohoo and boo-hoo, there is that old voodoo that you do. You're going to leave me on that line?
I can't one up you on that. We have about 5 more minutes if anyone wants to pop up there.
I never wrote it down. I remember I read it, Katie. God, it was 50, maybe 60 years ago. It was something from some very old, wise Chinese person, I think. But it had everything to do with this idea that in fact there is nothing to learn. And that learning, while we have to go through certain things to operate in this world, that learning is a process of accretion, where I learn what I think I need to know to deal with what I think life is about. Not just the education in school, which is, I would even question some of that, to tell you the truth. We never got around here at the foundation to opening our school for children. Maybe it's not too late, but I have a feeling it might be. And the idea that whatever I don't do doesn't have to be undone.
Right.
And that's what we're all the time, is cleaning up after ourselves. And if not excusing or explaining ourselves or justifying ourselves to others, then certainly what is justifying yourself or rationalizing your behavior other than cleaning up after a mess that you just made, that you believe because you can clean up after it means your consciousness is different than the thing that caused it, and it's not. That's another form of joy. No more cleanup. No, honest to God. Because if I don't create the karma, but rather become the instrument that completes the karma in the moment, which every creature is, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. If I don't create the karma, I don't have to clean it up. It's done on the spot. And if it's done on the spot, then I'm free. And that's joy. but not the joy of being someone who doesn't make mistakes, but the joy of a person who understands not to step into that moment using thought as the steps, as the ladder, and then I don't fall from thought. I don't fall from grace because that grace of thought is always imagined to begin with.
We can wrap up.
Okay, we can wrap it up.
I guess I'm back. Thank you. Thanks for the deep dive into this topic, and join us anytime you can. We're here like 3, 4, 5 times a week in one form or another. We're trying to expand our reach out there, and so you can join us on YouTube, Facebook. You can just join us on GoToWebinar. We have a wisdom school. We have the Weekend of Wisdoms 4 times a year when you can come visit us. You can actually come visit us anytime. Make your own little Weekend of Wisdom if you wish, or Week of Wisdom. So yeah, go to our website. Check out all the things that we have to offer on our website and on our events page. If you're more interested about the Weekend of Wisdom, you'll find it there on the events page, and you can just show up. Just come join us here and be with like-minded people. And I also just want to make sure you know about tomorrow. Guy will be speaking on the topic of find your true spiritual center and let go of useless stress and struggle. And if you want to join us on GoToWebinar, you can go to guyfinley.org/class, and that will take you to the page where you can sign up, and then you'll get a reminder an hour before we begin. And one quick note that we meet on Sundays and Wednesdays. We are going to be changing our Wednesday class time in the very near future. So we're going to, have been starting at 7 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to bump it back an hour, so we'll start at 6 p.m. And this is starting not this coming Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that, which
Wednesday
is
the 6th.
September 6th. All right? So make a note.
I know what day it is.
Yeah. All right. Yep. More?